you have to look after everything. You have to look after the whole, because looking after just your physical won't help. Just your mental won't help. Just your energetic won't help. Just your emotional. It is a connection of wholeness and of being as one.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Oliver Rolfe, and he has written a new book called The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Well-Being Today. More about that in a second. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests, little bio of myself. There's a donate button if you'd like to support the show through Patreon. Thank you. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and The Exploding Human Facebook page. Today, my guest is Oliver Rolfe, and we go to London, England to talk to him. We're going to be talking about his new book, which is a step-by-step guide to the relationship between your physical, mental, energetic, and emotional health. Oliver's a really interesting guy who had a lot of operations as a kid and some traumatic events in his life that has propelled him to want to learn more about how the human body, the human mind, and the human spirit work. And he has integrated all of these studies over the many years, drawing on the practitioners he has gone to as well as his own work. He is lively, he is energetic, he is committed to helping other people, and that is really what this whole podcast is about. So here he is. This is Oliver Rolfe. Good morning, Oliver. It's so great to meet you, and I really enjoyed our little pre-recording discussion.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's one, great to be here. Two, actually, that intro, I think we could have had a whole conversation that recorded, and we've got to remember what I've just said to you.
Well, it'll come up again if it's important, and it was all important, or it won't. You know, we'll have other great stuff to talk about because there's so much. I was looking through your book, and why don't you just say the title of your book, because I don't want to get it wrong, and I am the laziest person in the world when it comes to memorizing things. So say the title, please.
So the book's called The Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing Today. It's published by O-Books, which are a top publisher in mind, body, and spirit, and it is available on Amazon and everywhere else that you would want to buy a book from. Actually, it comes out on the 25th of November in the UK, and the 1st of December globally, because it's just after Thanksgiving. So it's a fantastic present just to give someone to say, thank you for having me, and thanks for Thanksgiving.
Yes, and I have a copy that I was sent, which I was really intrigued with the parts that I've read and looked through. There are so many topics that you cover in body, mind, spirit, and the chakras and energy and numerology, which I know nothing about. And we're going to talk about all that stuff. Let's first, though, talk about your background. How did you become somebody who has got interested in this stuff? What is your history?
I've had a lot of experiences in my life. And these experiences invariably have led me to the path we are now. So if you were to give me a moment just to run through, so the ages of 5 or 6, my parents got divorced, which is something that happens in the Western world fairly often. It wasn't the best of divorces. Parents didn't get on too well for a long period of time, put a lot of strain on our family. But within that period of time, I think my father had a nervous breakdown, which was, let's say it was what it was in many respects. But for a young family, it was something to deal with. From the ages of 6 to 16, I actually had about 45 operations, most of which were general operations or general anesthetics, a number of which were on my sinuses. Quite a repetitive situation, as you can understand, before a pretty big operation at the age of 16. Fast forward a little bit further to that, I had a very serious long-term girlfriend relationship, which invariably she said she was pregnant with a baby that was mine. Invariably it wasn't. It was an experience to experience, but actually we still get on well. I'm still in contact with her now. We obviously weren't in contact for quite a while after that, but I think it's important to repair and certainly mend any of these relationships going forward, because it certainly helps you as an individual. Again, pushing further forward, my brother was in rehab with drugs, drink, and alcohol addiction. My sister was in rehab for bulimia and anorexia. And then to throw all of that into the mix, I was, well, at the age of 33, I slipped a disc in my back, probably around just above the sternum, give or take. And that one disc slipped, went on to 7 discs slipped, and then a diagnosis of something called ankylosing spondylitis. Now, ankylosing spondylitis is an inflammatory disease of the spine, and left untreated, the spine would fuse. So at that moment, my life, let's say, it changed quite dramatically. And basically, I looked at the way that I could help myself in the best possible light. And that was changing my physicality, my mind, because it was, all of these things that I've been through, I've certainly been able to understand myself very well. Also understanding my energetic makeup and really connecting to everything else around me, and also very much my emotions, which brings us where the book has been based. Now, all of those experiences together have given me a great sense of understanding about different parts of probably all of the book. As you said, there's a lot in there, but there are different elements that I've connected to throughout the whole of my lifetime, and especially over the last decade plus, since my ankylosing spondylitis diagnosis, which really gave me a deeper understanding of myself, of what I feel I need for me. And I think that's also one of the most important things when we talk about health and well-being, is that you almost can't blanket health and well-being. It has to be tailored to the individual. And that's why I will always say that the more that you focus on yourself and the more that you understand yourself, it's the more that you can actually give yourself what you need.
Wow, that is a lot of trauma up till now. That's amazing that you have just made a choice to focus on the healing piece for yourself, and I like that idea of that it's an individual thing, because I always say I'm on the side of what works, and not everything works for every person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's certain things I've tried, I'm just like, it's not for me, and other people love it. So who's to say? So did you study these, did you go to like some type of schooling to learn about nutrition, and or is this, not to say that one's better than the other, are you a self-taught person?
I would say, no, it's absolutely fine. I would say that I've certainly had a school of life, but everything that I went down, I was always guided by a practitioner. Whether it be, and this is basically where a lot of my information comes from. Whilst I researched a huge amount, and the book took over in terms of when it was supposed to come out, rather than me saying that I was going to write it at the point I was going to write it. By the way, it was an interesting fact that I had my first book come out end of 2019, which is about careers, kind of life and careers more than anything else. My idea at that point was to wait until 2020, market the book to schools and universities, and then, second book come out or write the second book at some point in a couple of years' time. Obviously, something happened in 2020 which changed everyone's lives fairly quickly. And about 2.5 weeks into COVID, I was sitting in the garden with my wife, and I turned around to her and I said, I can't do this anymore. I think her first reaction was, what can't you do anymore? It's quite open. And I said, don't worry, it's nothing to do with us. I just can't do this anymore. I can't sit here and just do nothing. Obviously, still had work going on. I've got a business which I started when I was 28, which is still flourishing and growing very well, alongside which is executive search and consultancy. As I said, 2.5 weeks into COVID, I just said, look, I can't do this. My wife was very, very kind and said, okay, you go and do what you need to do. I'll sort out the kids. So she homeschooled brilliantly. She took a lot of the responsibility. And I spent 11 plus months writing this book. And that information that I had came from every experience I've ever had with any doctor, any surgeon, any homeopathic medical professional. But really, in my life, in many respects, I've been ill from pretty much the age of 5 or 6. So I've had a very fortunate upbringing to have a really good family around me. My mum's absolutely excellent, making sure that if there was someone to be seen, that I would see them. And because of those people that I saw and I met, and even through the operations that I had, I was able to understand a lot of different elements of the human form to a degree, but importantly, what I needed. So there's even more things if you have a look back at my life. So when I was 13, I weighed about 55 pounds more than I do now. So I was quite a big kid as well. Now, when you weigh that much, and I didn't carry it through, but when you weigh that much, it kind of stays with you, and the foods that you're eating stays with you. And have a look at the nutrition element. I've eaten all the bad things, so I know what didn't work. And then it was going on to the other side and going, okay, well, what doesn't work for me? And it's understanding the genuine aspect of what didn't work for me. So I'll give you a perfect example of this, and I'll come back to the other question before. And I know we're going to go here, there, and everywhere at this conversation, because there's just so much to cram in. So I used to, I said I've been in the city for 20 years now. I started my company at 28, so about 13 years ago. Now, in the office, lunchtimes, it was sandwiches, jacket potatoes, the usual stuff that everyone still eats, unfortunately. And I used to crash, jacket potato for me. I would literally feel the energy drain out of my body within like 2 hours or even less. And I just felt like I don't know. I'm not a drug person, but I can imagine it would feel like taking something that you really shouldn't take. And kind of my soul leaving my body purely from having like a jacket potato. So this kept on happening, and I was like, no, I just can't do this anymore. So I realized that actually cutting out white carbs for me was an important part of my diet. Then moving on to non-dairy, which I thought for me, again, an important part of my diet to cut out. I eat a huge amount of vegetables, not so many fruits. I think they say eat fruits and vegetables. Personally, I'm not a big sugar person, so I find actually a lot of fruit quite sweet. So again, it's just trying to work out what it is for you individually. So I've managed to have a food nutritionist. I've had a homeopathic doctor. I've had an osteopath. I've had a healer medium. I've had a Reiki healer. I've had quite a lot of surgeons, probably about 10 different surgeons in my life for different things. So it's come down from a lot of that side. But actually, the other side of the book is we've got 4 other professionals who are involved with it. So gentleman by the name of David Moxon, who's a 30-year psychologist, Anne Perry, who is an international numerologist, Sarah Leslie, who I call my spiritual mother, who is a clairvoyant healer medium as well, and Darren Rolfe, who is my brother, and who is a CEO of a rehab group in the UK called Steps Together. And that is a nice progression for him, because as I said not too long ago, he was in rehab for drinks, drug, and gambling. Now he's gone full circle in his life and is now built rehabilitation centers for those who are struggling like he was, and he's giving them opportunity and ability. And it's fantastic to see that work as well.
Well, as you were talking, I'm like, I've done almost everything that you've talked about. Not a ton of surgeries, but all those different types of healers. I've been sober for 37 years, so I know a lot about that world. And that's, kind of the impetus for even starting this podcast, is how can I take some of the things I've learned over the years that to improve my life to, dispense that information to other people. I want to talk about surgery for a second, because I've had a couple for, a couple different hernia and just, dental, just things like that. But what I noticed when I've had these things, there is an invasion or an attack in the, I'm going to call it the auric field, the energetic field around the body, where when something enters that field, and there is a residual effect that even after you're healed, at least I do, I felt it. Like I felt invaded in a sense, even though I was helped. And I, so many of those that you had must have really affected you emotionally, because not just physically, but emotionally, to be pierced, I guess would be the word.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie and say it was they were not easy experiences. And I know that I talk about these things not flippantly. I don't think I talk about them flippantly, but I do talk about them positively. And the reason why I talk about them positively is because of who I am today and how I feel about who I am today, and effectively what I'm trying to do at the same time. So I can only look at it positively because they gave me an experience that you couldn't ask for, if that makes sense. And I've been very aware in my life, Bob, that I've been through a lot of experiences. I've been connected enough to know that these experiences weren't just for me. And I knew that from quite a young age. My view of it would be, this is the element of me that continues for many lifetimes, and I believe it's got a lot of residual value and a lot of strength around it. I would say physically, mentally, and emotionally, I feel the scars everywhere, but I don't dwell on that ever. And going through it at a young age was difficult, because it took you out of, I love sport, and unfortunately my back stopped all of that, which was a massive mental change, which is kind of why I think I focus so much on spirituality as well. It's the same old adage, a teacher arrives when you need a teacher and not before. And at the same time I met my spiritual mother, but connected with my spiritual mother, it was at the time I needed it. It was at the time where my back had gone wrong. I was struggling with my emotions and pain and all of these changes, and I had to make the change. And that's why, with both the people that are involved in the book, the doctors that I spent time with, the experiences that I had over the last 10 years, it is an experience-led book, but the main basis of the book is there are researchers and scientists that have probably spent their whole lives on one or two aspects of focus. And all I've tried to do in some areas is bring that to light and really illuminate the amazing work that's been done on our core bodily system, but just presented in a way where people understand that you have to look after everything. You have to look after the whole, because looking after just your physical won't help. Just your mental won't help. Just your energetic won't help. Just your emotional. It is a connection of wholeness. and of being as one.
Yeah, I love that about how your approach to this, because you didn't just go, oh, well, here's how you need to eat. That's here's some suggestions about how to eat. But let's go over some of these things. Here was a title of a chapter I thought was interesting. Myths of body language. I thought that was an interesting thing. I didn't know there were myths. I'm sure there are, but what are the myths, and what can we learn about those things? Because these are topics I haven't talked about on my show, so that's why I'm going to go to some of these that listeners may not be something you would expect right now. But this was a fascinating thing when I looked through the titles of the chapters. Myths of body language.
The reason why body language is in the book to start with, it's about understanding. Firstly, it's understanding of self, and then understanding of others. So it comes very much within the emotional intelligence angle. So it's being socially aware, personally aware, and realistically understanding the non-verbal language. Because really, I think, if I'm right in saying, 70% of language is non-verbal. It's 73, I think, and it is in my book, and I can't remember the doctor who.
Yeah, it's higher than you think. It's
and its tone. It's the way you're sitting, the way you're everything. It's literally everything. It's tonal, verbal, and also I'd say the emotional tonal as well, which is the unwritten rule, which no one speaks about because no one's yet got into that level. We're still looking at the physical body rather than what goes on beyond it. But it's vitally important, first and foremost, when you have a look at the body language, to go or to recognize, I do that occasionally. And if I've done that, what does it mean? And does it connect? I think that's the first and foremost. When you read it, I was reading it and I kind of go through it and go, well, I've done that before. Is it true? Is that real? The other really important point with body language in particular is that it is in the very, very moment that you're focusing on. So you can't take one element of body language or one specific moment of body language and then continue it onwards. So I was watching a video back of myself in an interview, and I remember specifically saying something that was creative, is the best way I can describe it. I wasn't embellishing anything, but I generally had to think of something. And usually I don't think when I speak, which is probably an awful thing to say. But I'm more in the flow than, let's consciously be aware of every word that I'm saying. I think just in that moment that you can see a flicker of an eye, or a smirk, or a something, the little things. And this is why body language is so vitally important in terms of communication and understanding yourselves and other people. Now, some of the myths of body language, and I've been caught out by this. So folding your arms in particular. So people go, folding your arms, you're being cold and defensive and aloof, or whatever it might be. And actually, a lot of the time when you're folding your arms, and by the way, the chapter of this is based on a book by Joe Navarro, an FBI agent. Joe Navarro's book's fantastic as well. But Joe's been I think a specialist for about 25 years, if I'm right in saying, and he picked out the nuances from experience rather than from a book, which is basically, I think, where we need to live. We need to live in experience. We don't need to live in a book. I appreciate I've just created this book, but this is from experience. Mm-hmm. And the experiences are the ones that we want to be listening to and taking and grabbing. So Joe Navarro spotted all of these elements. As I say, folding your arms invariably for a lot of people is comforting. To be fair, if I'm a little bit chilly at the moment, I'm sitting in London, in England, and it's a bit chilly here. So actually folding my arms is quite nice. It gives me a little bit of warmth for my hands. But actually what they say is a self-soothing hug. So when you do, sort of give yourself a proper tuck in, your arms are folded, it doesn't mean you're defensive. It can mean you're defensive.
Yeah.
And it can mean you're putting up a barrier. But for example, as a myth of body language, that would be high up on the right high up on the list. Another one would be rubbing your chin, or covering your mouth. Covering your mouth or rubbing your chin, especially when you're talking, is a sign of distrust. But it's not a sign of distrust. It's just the fact that it's a comforting place, and it's soothing. Covering your mouth, it doesn't really help when I do that when I'm speaking, to be fair, especially for your listeners. But covering your mouth, I think most of us would know, and I've seen it in thousands of meetings and interviews that I've ever been. When you cover your mouth, especially when someone else is speaking, is that you are literally holding yourself from letting the words come out your mouth, and you're holding yourself back. So next time you watch someone when you're speaking to them and they're literally got their hands over their mouth, they have something they want to say to you, and they're waiting for you to stop before they say it. So take that in, listen to it, and take the verbal cue that when you've finished, and hurry up when you're speaking, they've got something to say to you.
Yeah, I like that's interesting. Somebody once said to me, "Are you really listening, or are you just getting ready to talk?"
That's a very good way to put it, really. But it's true. Yeah. How many people actively listen? That's the main thing. It's active listening. So it's being present and it's active listening.
What's one of the things that's a little challenging for me hosting the show is when I really get into active listening and then the person stops, sometimes I have a hard time going to the next thing because I haven't been planning the question. And I'm like, I don't really want to come up with anything. I just want to listen. But then I have to. And then other times I get
difficult
triggered.
When you're a host.
Say that again?
Definitely difficult. It's very difficult when you're a host. It's you're listening and you're doing at the same time. It's not the same element. We'll let you off a little bit, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling the audience that, but they didn't need to know that because they probably don't even realize that that's what I'm doing. Let's talk about ways to improve the immune system. That's always a big topic for people into health. How do I not get sick and stay strong? And
well, I think the first and foremost, the reason why the immune system's even in the book is, bearing in mind the past couple of years, it has been a focus for everyone. And understanding what it is important. And again, it's a connection to self. So, how you improve your life, your immune system is basically your life. How do you improve your life? And it is healthy living. It is lifestyle. It is nutrition. It literally is. It's sleeping well. It's having a good 6 to 8 hours every night. It is making sure your room is pitch black. It's making sure you're silent. It's making sure it's between, and excuse me if my memory is roughly wrong, but it's 15.6 degrees Celsius and 19 point, I think it's 4 or something like that. It is making sure that the small things are covered. Screen time. We have too much screen time. Make sure that before you go to bed, you're not constantly on your phone or your TVs or your screens. There must be at some point in your life that you've been on a TV screen, a computer, or a phone, and you've looked down at your watch and it's like 1, 2, 3 in the morning going, what have I done and why am I not in bed? And I think everyone's done it at some point. And the thing is, what happens is, and we mentioned it just before we came on air, is that circadian rhythm gets basically confused and upset and disrupted by the red, green, and particularly blue lights of screens. So basically there is a situation where as the light hits your it's your third eye, but it's also your pineal gland, because that's the energy transducer. But these are the things that are massively important to understand. Why does it affect you, and why should it affect you, and what does it mean, and how does it continue onwards? So if you go on to actually screen time can cause a myriad of ills, including diabetes and back issues and eye issues and and all sorts. And then you've got things like coffee consumption. Now, I think coffee consumption has been a conversation of topic for years of what's too much, how much, is it good for you? Is it bad for you? And the answer is yes, it is. Just depending on which party you want to listen to. And actually, my view of it, I have one coffee a day, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's my morning coffee, and it is literally just the best thing for me.
Oh, it's heaven. I think about it before I go to sleep. Like, how great is it going to be? That morning cup of coffee.
What? I'm not gonna. I agree with you first and foremost, and the reason why I'm laughing is because there are two things. I don't have sugar, and I don't like addictives. Now, coffee is addictive, and the only time I have sugar is in the morning. And I have often done the same thing as you, and I've sort of just before bed, I go, I can't wait for a piece of toast with a bit of jam on and my coffee. Do I want it, or am I addicted to it? And it's a question, and I'm still not 100% sure, but I'm working on it, because I think that's my next book. It's the connection between conscious and subconscious.
I just would ask the question, how's that working for me? And
which is
it sounds like
point.
It's working very well for you. That's what I can say.
Yeah, I love it, and I really enjoy it. But I think once you go past, excuse me, 6 coffees a day, then there is a negative effect, and actually can reduce your lifespan by, I think, 22%, something like that. So you're talking about, when you're talking about the immune system, you are talking about absolutely everything. Smoking, like tobacco. If anyone is still smoking tobacco out there, you need your head read. I appreciate vapes are not good, and people will have a go at me, and I'm sure loads of tobacco companies might have a go at me. I've been, in my life, I've been a smoker for about half a week, and I hated it. I've always been that kid who hated it. I told my mum to stop smoking. My dad still smokes cigars. I have no idea how, but he does. There is nothing positive about tobacco. Nothing. I think vapes are not great, especially the liquid vapes, but they're better. If it gets you off tobacco, great. But don't start smoking vapes as an additional, because that doesn't help. People have kind of mismanaged that one and gone straight to smoking vapes rather than smoking anything. But don't smoke tobacco. It's just the worst thing in human history. And if it came out now, they would never, for a right mind, think about bringing it into society. And if you've seen what America have done with marijuana's got a huge amount of positives to it, and far better than a lot of the let's say the medical ways of pain relief and sleep problems and eating problems, etc., etc. That's a positive. But personally, I'd like to have seen it maybe specifically focused on the medical side, rather than a mass kind of
the recreational side.
Yeah, which is dangerous, I feel.
Oh yeah, it's it's an interesting thing about humans, how we want to change the way we feel, even to our detriment. It's an particularly I have a friend who quit smoking many years ago that I had dinner with the other day, and he had lung problems. Some of it was from tobacco and a chronic cough. So he had to stop. He physically, medically had to stop. And we had dinner, and he goes, even though I haven't smoked in decades, after a meal, I still want a cigarette really bad, because it hasn't gone away. How powerful is that? I mean, that's incredible for just tobacco. And then all the additives, of course. And what does it do to us physically? I didn't think we were going to talk about smoking, but I'm happy that we are. It constricts the blood vessels. That's one thing I know that it does, and it speeds up the heart rate. That's about as much as I know about tobacco. But anytime you're burning something in your lungs, how good could that be for you? And marijuana included.
Well, yeah, I think the marijuana side of it, I would never suggest smoking it. So there are. I've looked into marijuana a lot, because I was wondering about the effects on ankylosing spondylitis and chronic pain relief. the effects on the spirituality, because a lot of shamans use it, just the overall benefits of, really. And there are definitely benefits. We're still some way off of knowing the full benefits. But even if you have a look, I think with things like Parkinson's, you can see the immediate, genuine medical benefit. And I think the balance is, it might not be the best thing for you, but if there's X wrong with you and Y is a medication, then there is a balance potentially. But I think that's the point with everything. And actually, this is my point with the holistic guide to your health and well-being today, is that it's not about ignoring the Western medicine, and it's not about emphasizing the Eastern medicine. It's about taking a view of everything and utilizing everything and being aware of everything. So I think that's the importance of the book. I really genuinely, I feel that. And look, it's something that I use, and actually it is quite funny. Now, technically, I now wrote the book a year and a half ago. So my memory of actually going through the process of writing the book is now somewhere slightly distant, so I can enjoy the process. But the thing is, I picked the book up the other day, and I was we're talking to someone about numerology, and I was about to check it on the internet. I think, well, no, I've actually got this book, which is quite useful. So I went to grab the book, and I was flicking through, and I was reading one of the chapters. I think it was on numerology, and also about gut health, with a guy called Antoine Bouchon, which created the terrain theory. The fact that basically most of our immune system is based in the gut. Therefore, if you look after your gut, your immune system is better. It really is quite a fascinating thought process when you put it like that. But anyway, I was reading the book, and I was kind of, almost every time I read the book, it refreshes my mind that it's there. And I read this chapter, and I went, oh, this is great. This is actually really genuinely useful and different information that even I know the detail, but it goes in. When you read it once, it's got one set of detail. When you read it again, it goes into another level. When you read it again, it goes to another level. And it's one of those books where, look, I wouldn't say you read it A to Z. I think maybe read it A to Z the first time, leave it out, and then when you need it, or you think there's something that you want to have a refresher on, just pick it up and have a flick through. Because it really is one of those books where it can give you guidance this sounds arrogant. I'm going to go from what other people have said, but guidance and inspiration at any point that you need. But for me, it's given me inspiration, even writing it and going through the detail of it.
It sounds like writing it was part of your healing process as much as it was to get information to other people, which I think is great, because it's coming from a level of depth and honesty that's really important, and that's going to come through the pages.
You're possibly very right in the fact that it may well have been a full circle healing process for me. And actually, if you take a view that how I look at my life, I do look at my life as it's going to be in two parts. And the first part was a huge amount about learning through experience. And actually, dare I say, and I haven't done this with your name, but if you look at your numerology numbers, I would imagine, I don't want to say a number and be wrong, but I think you're very much towards that illumination of your own understanding and your own experiences. So I think I've literally known you for about an hour of our lives so far, and I think we've automatically connected. But I think we've connected because you have learned through experience and truly understood. And I think this is the difference between learning from experience, learning from a book, and having a balance of both. When you learn from a book, you can never truly understand. You can only advise, and you can only have the fact in inverted commas. When you experience, you know, and therefore you don't have to think, because you know. So all of the elements that I've been through, it's a knowing. I'm not talking a different person's game. I would never talk the language of a doctor, and I'd never want to take that role, because I think they're there for a specific reason. I'm actually putting myself through a counseling skills course, in the UK, because it's something that I want to learn more of and be even better. But I've spent additionally 20 years guiding people throughout their careers, throughout their lives. And it's the experience of myself, of other people, and of those conversations. All I can say, I can genuinely feel. And that feeling for me is so important and so passionate and so energetically, I'm going to say it, inspiring. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's how it's feeling and coming across to me at this moment.
Yeah, it feels right for you to be doing it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's talk about numerology for a second, because two things. I don't really know what it is. It seems on the surface a little woo-woo for me, but I know that there's something to it because it's been around forever. And how can we do my name on a personal level?
Okay. Well, so how can we do your name? So numerology is fascinating. It genuinely is fascinating. So there are two ways you can look at numerology. And I think automatically when people hear numerology, you think, it's a little woo-woo, maybe outside my comfort zone. However, so if I'm right in saying 2,500 BC, numerology was created by Pythagoras. I'm sure most people in the world will know who Pythagoras was, mathematical genius, and really created a lot of the basis of our modern day maths. Pythagoras, being the slightly more intuitive chap that he was, had an understanding, or let's say had a knowing, that numbers were more than numbers. Numbers had a personality. So he was able, let's say, to create a way forward that could determine what each numbers meant. So, in some ways, if anyone's had tarot card readings, which would be, I think, one step further forward, even certain numbers that keep on appearing, numbers are the basis of our world. Okay, so if you boiled anything down to the common denominator, the very, very base that anything exists, it would come down to a number. Everything in the universe comes down to a number, categorically, which kind of then starts you to think that if that is categorically true, which I believe scientists have worked that one out, is this then a simulation? Because if it's numbers, then there's sequences. If it's sequences, it can be software. If it's software, how real is this? And that's for a whole different conversation, because we're not going to get in there now, because that's a very different thing. So numerology, as said, with Pythagoras and his understanding, that's the basis of numerology. Take the woo-woo out of it. That is the basis of your numbers, of how you get the understanding through it. And numerology is conducted through your given name at birth, so your full given name at birth, and it is also conducted by your date of birth as well. Those are the only two factors you need. And realistically, there are, what I talk about in the book, are 5 core numbers. The life path invariably is the path that you are going to lead. So it really is like, the best way to describe numerology as a slightly more woo-woo topic is that it is based on the notion that we are reincarnated. It is based on the notion that before we come down, or before we reincarnate, we sign a contract, and the contract is a soul's contract, or our soul's contract. And in our soul's contract, we sign to learn certain lessons and experiences and understanding, and we, let's say, commit to who our parents are, and we choose a certain number of aspects. And before we come down, we will, let's say, give the message of the name that we want to equal the number that we want to be. It sounds very, very far-fetched, but the way I can describe it, my son was born 9 years ago, and we had a list of names, and it was, our list of names ended up being like 3 or 4 names, and that list of names worked itself out. We did nothing to that list. It was two names, it was this and this, that was it. And you kind of go, yeah, I think I've chosen that. That's how you feel. It's we chose that. We're in agreement. We chose. You didn't choose it at all. It is something that is supposed to happen. So I know this is the bit that's probably the bit where people go, can I believe that? Well, this is where the energetic side of the world comes into it. We're not just the physical being. We are a hotbed of electrical activity. Our brains have got billions of electrical wires. Our hearts are electrical pulses. These are the things that run through our body. When people might say chakras are woo-woo, chakras are energetic transducers of our bodily system. And if everyone goes, well, how can we be energy? Blah, blah, blah. Well, exactly. Our brains are energy. Our heart is energy. We are energy. How do we use MRIs to conduct and to see our energy, ECGs to hear, all of these things. I know people's view is, unless I see it, I can't believe it, or unless I experience it, I can't feel it. As I'm sure someone who, like yourself, who spend a lot of time in meditation and yoga, you will be more aware of energy, motion, and just have a general additional or heightened awareness around you. And these are the things that we spoke about it slightly before we came on, but these are the things that I believe are now starting to come through in the modern world and the Western world. It's starting to understand that there is more that we can see. Our eyesight can only see in a certain frequency, and there's plenty of more light frequencies out there. Our hearing can only see in a very small frequency. There are plenty of other frequencies out there. We know that from dogs or animals in particular. It is about allowing us to think that there are other things. It's not about saying anything more than that, but it's allowing us to think there are more than what we can see in our lifetimes. I think we are now entering into that period where we will start to go into a more socially connected world, a more socially supported world, and not from governments. I mean, individually, we will have to become more supportive of each other. We have to become more aware of what's happening now. The world has changed, structures have changed, and we need to be prepared for that. But we also need to be more understanding. We need to be aware of what we can do collectively and what will happen if we just act individually.
Yeah, you're really talking about compassion, because there's a certain wisdom in that and a certain amount of awareness in order to be compassionate. And it's, it's sort of the opposite of selfishness in a sense. And that's really where most of the problems start to come from. And where does selfishness come from? Fear. So there's an amount of trusting the universe. But if you're not aware of those things, how can you trust something that you're not, it's like a circle of, there's a leap that has to happen and a knowing. And we were talking about this before the episode, how we see things and understand things a certain way, and then there's other folks, and we were talking about what might be the cause of that. They just like, no, you live and you die. You go to work, you go home, you eat dinner, you go to sleep, you do it again. Weekends you play, and then you die. As opposed to other folks like we've been curious about what's there that is sort of the unseen, that's got a little bit more depth and meaning, and why are we here and all that. And I don't know how or why, or if it's even feasible or desirable to have the majority of the planet see that kind of thing that is see the unseen.
There's this collective consciousness that is definitely rising, hence probably our conversation now. Going back to to the change of the structure of the world that's been. So I've spent 20 years in the city, in the financial world, and I've seen from an outside perspective the change of what is happening to money, what's happened to money over a 40-year period. We've been fed to find our happiness through new cars and clothes and a new gadget and, whatever the and is for whomever it may be. And I think the point is that if you keep on spending full stop, you're going to have to keep on working. And I think people often forget about that fact, is that if you manage to stop spending throughout your life, you'll actually have a lot more coming towards the end of your days. And therefore, you'll probably be in a better position. So therefore, mentally, it'd be stronger anyway. One of the things that we're doing alongside our business, we've got a financial holistic health.
I want to do a whole episode on this stuff, on career and money. I really do. I want to, if you're open to that, because I think that would be a wonderful topic, particularly in a way that's a healthy approach to those things that are necessary. Let's do that as a whole other episode, because that is, to me, I think my audience would love that. I know I would. And so
I'm happy to talk about it. So
because it's cool. It's cool, because it's about fulfillment and how do we best operate as a species to survive and thrive, those things. So we're gonna folks, we are gonna do that as a separate episode. Oliver's agreed. You're invited back, and I'm going to send you an email in the next couple of days, and we'll set something up because there's so much stuff that I didn't even get to, and I'm running out of my time because I actually have a yoga class I have to get to. I don't have to, but I want to.
Talk about synchronicity, Bob. That's the other thing. We've got synchronicity to talk about.
That's right. I knew you were going to say that.
But I love it. The world works in synchronicity. And it's kind of a lovely way to finish this. So if no one out there believes about energy or energetics, think about your life, how things just happen. And it really is a matter of they just happen. The energy you get at a particular time to give you, that's given to you to go and deliver on something. The moment someone calls you, the fact that you think of someone and the phone rings. That's happened to everyone, like the whole time. All I can ever say in my lifetime is that I will always be a believer, because I have seen, I've experienced, I've gone through the other side, so to speak. We talked about it very briefly before we came on, about life and death, and the fact that when you're more aware of other things, death doesn't become scary. But it's, as I said to you before, the only thing I really want is a full, healthy life to experience and fulfill and do everything that I ever wanted to do. And more importantly, deliver everything that I had promised to deliver before I got here. And to ensure that when I do finally meet my maker, not just look hopefully about the people around me, but look inside and say, yeah, I've done the right thing. I did what I could. Almost say goodnight with a wink and a smile.
Wow, what a beautiful ending to an episode. Thank you so much, Oliver Rolfe, and get his book. And how do people find you? We're going to have another episode coming up, but how do people find you if they're not? You better listen to the next episode, folks. But if you don't, this is how you find him and get his book. Go ahead.
So the Holistic Guide to Your Health and Wellbeing today, as I said, it's on Amazon. You can get it in Barnes & Noble in the US as well. And from all good bookstores, it really is absolutely everywhere. You can pre-order now. You can actually catch me on, you can go straight to my website, which is www.spartan-int.com. That's spartan-int.com. And if you want to have a look at my publisher as well, which is O-Books, and that's o-books.com. And they are one of the top publishers in the UK for mind, body, and spirit books. But Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you
for really having me, and generally for this conversation. It's been quite awesome. I love connecting with people, full stop. But I think when you connect instantly with someone, and like I have with you, and I hope it's reciprocal, it is. It becomes a real pleasure. It really does.
Yeah. I wish I could walk across the street and we could have a cup of coffee, even if it's the second cup. I would do that.
Peppermint tea for the second one.
Have a blessed day. Thank you so much. Much appreciation for you folks listening in to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. There's a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and The Exploding Human Facebook page. Once again, I want to thank Oliver Rolfe, and I hope you guys go visit his websites and check out his new book. Thanks so much. Have a great day.